Tactical came in and ran to the back of the Cosmo. At that point, that's when they started getting everybody out.
Standoff on the Strip. A man opens fire on a bus, killing one person before barricading himself. How police contained the situation.
There were at least 6 officers with their weapons drawn, including an AR assault rifle, and others had handguns drawn. And they were yelling if anybody had seen anything.
And this situation spurred hours of confusion for Las Vegas tourists. We speak with some guests who say they were kept in the dark during these tense moments.
Good evening, I'm John Langler.
And I'm Christianne Klein. Now, the Strip is back open after that deadly shooting. Metro Police say a man with significant mental health issues opened fire on a bus, killing one person and injuring another.
It started just before 11 this morning at Las Vegas Boulevard and Harmon. We bring you team coverage tonight. Karen Castro is at UMC where the victims were taken. Brittany Edney is on the Harmon pedestrian bridge that is now back open. But Mauricio Marin leads off our coverage with the latest on the investigation. Good evening, Mauricio.
Good afternoon. Metro Police were able to get their suspect without firing any shots from officers. The ordeal went on for hours, but as you can see behind me now, the Strip is mostly back open. Police say the suspect appeared to be mentally disturbed. He started firing shots and struck 2 people, killing 1 person. The second person recovering in the hospital. When officers arrived to the scene just outside the Cosmopolitan on the Las Vegas Boulevard, the suspect was holed up in a double-decker bus where the shooting happened, according to police. SWAT used a flash grenade to get a robot inside the bus that the suspect threw back out. He eventually called 911 to communicate with negotiators, and the shooting caused some panic at the Cosmopolitan, according to people inside the hotel casino at the time, not knowing where the firing was coming from. One person scrambling to get out saw one of the victims on the floor.
There was a gentleman, they were doing compression for CPR outside, and then Tactical came in and ran to the back of the Cosmo. At that point, that's when they started getting everybody out. We've been on the side over here, and we heard the echo of gunshots. A couple more minutes later, there's 3 more.
The suspect eventually came out with his hands up and gave up to authorities. His name has not been released, but officers tell us he's a local, about 50 years old. Police say the suspect fired shots during the negotiations, but officers did not return fire and were able to resolve the situation without anyone else getting hurt. Police say this appears to be an isolated incident and is not terrorist related, so that's something that they wanted to stress. As you can imagine, so many people, well, this impacted so many people. For more on this, let's check in with our very own Brittany Edney.
Well, this pedestrian bridge that we've been standing on all afternoon has basically been like a gathering point for both visitors and also tourists alike who have been not able to get through the Strip because it has been blocked off due to this barricade situation. I can tell you that while northbound lanes of traffic have been reopened, that southbound lanes here on Las Vegas Boulevard are still closed, and Metro says that those are not going to reopen until they are finished processing the crime scene down there. You know, one woman that we spoke to earlier says she described what happened as literally enough violence for a lifetime. She says she and her family were here on the Strip when they heard multiple gunshots ring out. Then she says she saw a man lying on the sidewalk receiving CPR. It's a scene she says that she's never going to be able to forget. Other tourists we spoke to who are staying at the Cosmopolitan, they say it was nearly impossible to get through to the hotel today, and when they finally did, they weren't providing a lot of information or suggestions on what guests should do. We also spoke to a woman from Chicago who says this was her first trip to Las Vegas, and this was a far cry from the glitz and glam that she expected on her trip.
Very shocking, very disheartening, in disbelief. Just can't believe it. There's so much going on, I know, in the nation, but to come here to Las Vegas on the Strip, and we're residing right now at the Bellagio's, but to see that it's just disheartening. You don't think, out of all things that could happen, you don't think that's going to happen your first time in Las Vegas on the Strip.
Okay. And while this has been a huge inconvenience for a lot of guests who have been blocked off from getting back to their properties, tonight at 6, we're going to hear what people are saying about the way that Metro handled the situation today. Reporting live, Brittany Edney, 8 News Now.
Okay, thank you, Brittany. Now, as we said earlier, one victim is being treated at UMC. Karen Castro is outside of the hospital with more on their current condition. Karen, what is the latest?
Christianne, we're told the surviving shooting victim is recovering from his injuries. We're told he was transported here to UMC to be treated for a gunshot wound to his stomach before being released from the hospital. So he is now presumably at home recovering. Unfortunately, that second victim died here at UMC. In the meantime, things a bit quiet at the hospital, but we want to get to some video we shot just earlier this afternoon. You can see police cruisers outside UMC trauma entrance. It's typically standard for officers to come to the hospital following a shooting, especially if there are surviving victims. At this point, the identity of the victim, both victims have not been released. All we know is they are both men, but police did say they believe both victims did not know the suspected shooter. Back out here live, we do expect the Clark County coroner to release the victim, the name of the victim who died in the coming days after notifying his family. For now, reporting live, Karen Castro, 8 News Now.
Okay, thanks, Karen. We'll have much more with Karen, too, coming up in our 6 o'clock news.
Well, just last night, there was another tense situation on the Strip. Masked men broke into a watch store inside the Bellagio.
Patrick Walker joins us with former Metro Lieutenant Ted Snodgrass about what it takes to police the Strip.
Well, Christianne and John, that's right. You know, with a couple of high-profile incidents in the last 24 hours, it really brings the question of officers doing their job on the Strip and kind of the unique challenges. So, Ted, I think let's just talk about this. This is essentially a city of 300,000 people within just a couple of square miles. What are the challenges of officers doing their work on the Strip versus out in the community and other places?
It's very congested, very hard to get from point A to point B. You've got to make time to get to where you're going. And then you've got to realize, too, which is a lot of times you don't see on this, is that when the officer's trying to get to that point, they don't want to cause more problems by becoming involved in accidents or running over pedestrians or doing things of that sort.
There are a lot of eyes, obviously, with cameras up and down the Strip. You talk about Metro, of course, monitors some of them, but also inside it on the property of casinos. Is that something that can quickly be accessed in the case of whether it's some sort of armed robbery or some sort of incident like that, all the way up to an ongoing incident?
It can be, but you have to separate what you really want from just the noise that's involved in it. There's so much information that's coming in when you first get there that you have to be able to separate what is useful to you to that's just superfluous.
Let's come back to the incident here that we just happened today. So you have an idea of where this alleged shooter is. Police are trying to contain. How does that work? Kind of the checklist that officers do to try to contain the problem.
Well, first of all, you got to identify where your threat's at. And once you do identify where your threat's at, you have to isolate, and then you have to contain that threat. The other thing you have to look at when you're getting there, and there may only be 1 or 2 officers, but you know more help's coming along, is there a secondary threat that's going to pose you problems as you get there? Is there another family member that's involved in this or another partner that's working with them? Once you have the threat contained and you go from a dynamic situation to a more static situation, then you can start setting up your perimeters and sterilize the area to be able to do what you need to do.
Well, finally, obviously your background is with the Metropolitan Police Department, but with the promise now of more officers coming to the Strip, how important is it to get those bodies there and those officers out there to really be reinforcements for the ones that are already on staff?
We talked about this somewhat before the interviews. What people don't understand sometimes is when you hire those officers, it takes up to 2 years before they're functional police officers that can go out there and act upon their own. So it's incredibly important. I mean, how important is it to you for your safety, and especially in those areas, to have those police officers out there and also have to be competent? And I think what you saw today is there's a beyond being competent, where they went out there and isolated this man instantly, were able to set up a sterilized zone to where, as you talked about, where there were shots fired, but they didn't have to shoot back because there wasn't anybody that was being threatened, and they had more control over the situation and had intelligence coming in as to what to do.
Well, a lot of valuable insight. Former lieutenant with the Metropolitan Police Department, Ted Snodgrass, thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Send it back over to you.
Patrick, thank you very much. Straight ahead on the Valley's News Leader, more on the shooting, and also a baseball MVP comes home.
It is big league weekend in the Valley, and Chris Bryant is in the spotlight. We'll be right back.
Almost didn't recognize you.
Yeah, Sunday, April 2nd. Now, live, this is 8 News Now, Weekend Edition.
Well, weekends are normally busy with traffic around the Strip, even without the closures from today's deadly shooting and standoff. And although the roads around the Cosmopolitan have reopened, roads remain congested at this hour.
Katie Bauer is looking at it all, bringing you some alternate routes if you are heading to the Strip tonight. Katie.
Yeah, John, good evening. You know, this evening we had that incident out along the Strip. It really backed up traffic. I want to start off first with showing you some of our traffic cameras here locally. You can see still some movement out there. This camera showing Las Vegas Boulevard and Harmon. Remember that Harmon going northbound has been shut off, so shut down, excuse me, going southbound. I want to reiterate that northbound has been moving. And then also we've got another camera, the Strip at, we don't have that camera. We'll show you the traffic maps right now. Here's a couple alternatives. Remember, we've got very congested traffic right along the Strip. I would really try to encourage you to go around. Try to avoid Flamingo right near the freeway. You can start to see it improves out around Koval, and then Harmon, you see that backup, that continued congestion going east and westbound, especially here if you're traveling westbound. Of course, we'll have all of those alternatives listed on Twitter as well, guys. I'll send it back over to you.
Okay, thanks, Katie. We'll check in with you in just a few minutes. Well, many of you reacted to the shooting on Facebook. Rashawn says it is too much going on in Vegas. Catherine responds in part, horrible things happen in every small town and big city across America. Unfortunately, lively Las Vegas attracts all kinds of crazy.
Ariel writes, it's always something here. Wild West. Barbara posts, I live 17 miles from the Strip, but wonder about all the visitors. Hopefully nobody will get hurt or killed. And luckily that didn't happen. Lastly, Janine says, wow, 2 major incidents in 12 hours.
And that one of those incidents not far from there at the Bellagio, a gang of masked men in tuxedos broke into a Rolex store. Now, police say the men rushed the store just before 1 this morning, using sledgehammers to break into jewelry cases, which many thought were gunshots. Fortunately, no shots were fired. No one was injured. Police tell us they have arrested at least 1 person in connection to the burglary at this high-end retail store. The hotel casino released this statement, which says in part, Bellagio would like to thank our guests and employees for their calm and responsible response. We would also like to extend our appreciation to the men and women of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department for their swift response and arrest of a suspect.
From a hectic day on the Strip, we check in with weather. We've seen a bit of rain around the valley. Meteorologist Katie Bauer is here with a look at what we can expect this evening.
Yeah, good evening, John. And you know, at least this part, it wasn't widespread. The showers were pockets and isolated, mostly on the west side of town and also now moving in towards southbound. You can see very limited and also very light. A lot of what we had was falling as virga, evaporating before it even reached to the ground. Noticing, though, we're still seeing just a little bit of light snow out around Mount Charleston. So that snow still lingering here at this 5 o'clock hour. Again, most of us seeing a dry day here, but we did have those pockets of sporadic showers. Here's current conditions right now. You see a bit cooler of a day for us here. Temperatures in the upper 60s around Las Vegas and in Henderson. North Las Vegas at about 70 degrees. We will start to gradually warm back up here as we head towards the mid and late part of this next week ahead. Otherwise, though, looking at dry conditions. More details, though, on breezes headed our way. That's coming up in my extended forecast, guys.
All right, Katie, thank you very much. Cashman Field sold out quickly for Big League weekend. The game was much more than a spring training matchup between the Cubs and the Reds. John Treach has more. Hi, John.
Yeah, Chris Bryant had 37 recording devices in his face and one amazing story to tell. The hometown hero returned as a World Series champ, an MVP, and a baseball beacon for Las Vegas. What's it like to be a star? How has your life changed? What's next for the MVP? All questions reserved for a superstar. But one of our own. Chris Bryant is one of baseball's greatest young stars and one of the most important players in Cubs history. In a 6-week span, the pride of Bonanza High School helped snap the 108-year World Series drought. Won the MVP, got married, and met the president. That's an iconic hot streak.
An off season that probably going to be the best one that I ever have in my whole career. So I really did take advantage of it. You know, I got as many pictures and memories as I can from the whole experience. And I mean, not a lot of people get to do what I've done so far in my career at such a young age. And, you know, for me, I'm just so thankful for it, and I'm just thankful for all the opportunities.
Grown men, married women, and children were desperately trying to get the Stars' attention before the game. Bryant signed hundreds of autographs and then hit a double in the first inning. Even with those 37 recording devices in his face, the 25-year-old exuded a quiet confidence that screamed MVP. We'll be back after break.
Good Saturday evening. Taking a look at your forecast here locally across the desert and looking at the valley here locally with a few isolated sprinkles here that we've seen kind of pop up, but generally not widespread in nature. Most of our day has been quite pleasant. In fact, you have seen plenty of blue sky out around, and you can notice it especially out around our Lake Mead camera. More blue sky out there, but we do have a few clouds. Those clouds will be increasing here as we head towards later this evening. Increasing clouds, kind of the factor here for us heading in towards the next couple of hours. You can see on satellite radar where we've had those pockets of isolated rain. Let's start up just on towards the west side of town, I should say, between about Summerlin and Blue Diamond. It was light in nature if you're driving anywhere around the I-15 corridor, and you probably were sitting there for some time because of that backup. You saw a very quick downpour here in the southwest part of town. That was quick. Most of what we've been seeing has been falling as again, evaporating before it actually reaches the ground level. But we've also noticed just a little bit of that falling as snow. Some cooler temperatures up at Mount Charleston has promoted that opportunity. We've also seen a few isolated showers down around the Searchlight area, now right along the Arizona and Nevada state line. Here's what's happening. The big picture, we've got a couple systems that are going to be moving in the next couple of days. The main impact this is going to have is a reduction in our temperatures. After temperatures start to fall in towards the mid to upper 60s, we will rebound. We'll start to notice that ridge of high pressure returning, and that's when we'll return back to temperatures in the 80s. Today, though, below average for us after a stretch of some above average temperatures, only at about 68 degrees right now. A little bit breezy out there, those winds coming out of the west at 13 miles an hour. Here's your almanac. 71 degrees today. Again, normal temps for us should be 73 here this time of the year, so we had a hard time climbing. Tonight we will fall down to about 54 degrees. Some few increasing clouds. Generally, though, not a bad day, in those extended forecast temperatures showing. Here it is. You can see temperatures falling just a little bit before increasing once again come Thursday. Friday, another big dip and breezy winds making another comeback here locally across the valley. John, Christianne, I'll send back over to you guys.
Katie looks very good. Thanks.
And stay with us here on 8 News Now. We're going to take a live look right now on the Strip. This is where that hours-long deadly shooting and standoff has come to an end. We'll check in with Mauricio in just a few minutes.
Tax refund.
Now, live, this is 8 News Now, Weekend Edition.
And back to our top story, that shooting and standoff on the Las Vegas Strip.
This happened shortly before 11 this morning at the intersection of Las Vegas Boulevard and Harmon. It left the boulevard closed from there to Flamingo as police negotiated with the suspect.
And that's where we find our Mauricio Marine with the latest.
Well, good afternoon. We've been here for most of the day. The hours-long ordeal had a big portion of the Las Vegas Strip shut down. Now, thankfully, it's mostly open. But Metro had to work fast to keep people safe, confronted with a mentally disturbed man who started firing shots inside a public bus. Police say the suspect shot 2 people. Many others ran off the bus as quickly as they could. 1 person killed. A second person recovering in the hospital. Now, when police arrived, the suspect refused to come out, forcing them into a barricade situation. SWAT tried using a robot to communicate with the man who was on the 2nd story of the double-decker bus. He threw out that device, and police say he even fired shots. Officers did not shoot back. Now, the shooting caused confusion inside the Cosmopolitan, according to guests, not knowing where the shots were coming from. The suspect ultimately gave up with his hands up. Now police are in the process of processing the scene. We saw the white bus that he was in just moved moments ago. They hope to reopen the southbound lanes shortly. Reporting live, Mauricio Marin, 8 News Now.
Mauricio, thank you very much for the update.
And that's it for us. Join us again in about 30 minutes at 6.
See you then.
How's it going?